Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. Something happened this weekend, and you may not know that it happened. But also, you probably don't understand what it says about our society. The Daily Wire reports that Andrew and Tristan Tate, the controversial brothers and Manosphere influencers, were arrested in Miami on Saturday on a warrant in the United Kingdom. The Tates are charged with a slew of crimes ranging from sexual assault and rape to human trafficking and possession of child pornography. The Tates were first arrested on similar charges in Romania in 2022, the beginning of an ongoing criminal saga for the pair, who rose to prominence with their flashy lifestyles and videos encouraging young men to be alpha males. But who are Andrew and Tristan exactly? How did they rise to prominence? And when did things start to go south? Here's something you need to know about the Tate brothers. First of all, Andrew, who's 39, and Tristan, 38, were born to a British mother, Eileen, and an American Air Force sergeant and chess master, Emroy Tate. They lived in the United States until their parents divorced, whereupon they returned to the United Kingdom with their mother. The pair also have a younger sister, Janine, about whom little is publicly available. Both Tate brothers hold dual citizenship in the United States and the United Kingdom. Andrew Tate began kickboxing around 2005 and went on to win 4 world championships. Tristan also enjoyed mild success in kickboxing, but the pair soon moved on to more nefarious pursuits. And according to Andrew Tate, in 2014, he began brainstorming ways to make money, which was not coming in from kickboxing. And so, realizing that he had about 5 girlfriends, he decided to begin a webcam pornography business, beginning with just his girlfriends and eventually recruiting other women to perform. Tate claims that the business netted $100,000 in its first month. The brothers moved their webcam empire to Romania sometime between 2015 and 2017, where it took on a massive scale. In that window, Andrew Tate rose to fame as a contestant on the British version of the popular TV show Big Brother. Tate was booted from the show after just 6 days, with producers citing Tate's outside activities as grounds for removal. Those outside activities include some of the earliest allegations against the Tate brothers. Several women have accused the brothers of luring them to Romania on the promise of a romantic relationship, only to coerce them into performing for their webcam streams. At least 2 women have accused the Tate brothers of raping and physically assaulting them during this period. And when Andrew Tate claims to have made more than $500,000 a month and had 75 women working for him. But by 2020, the webcam ring was shuttered. The Tates had a new venture, and it would be their biggest yet. Around 2017, the Tates began pitching themselves as lifestyle gurus, teaching young men how to succeed in business and romance. And by 2020, the business had grown into Hustlers University, an online community where for $50 a month, men could learn from the Tate brothers. Or for $8,000 a year, members could join the War Room for even more elite lessons. And fueled by their social media posts predicting flashy cars and women and all-around lavish living, the Tates developed a massive following, primarily among young men. And the men who flocked to Tate's courses learned that the way to make money and impress women was to behave like the Tates. That is, arrogant and flashy and rude to women they want to attract. Well, during this time, Tate became a player in the culture wars thanks to his controversial statements about women and minorities, and especially Jews, actually. Following Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, Tate began to express support for Palestinian terrorists, denying the Holocaust, and performed a Nazi salute, among other anti-Semitic acts. Tate claimed that at its peak, Hustler University had 80,000, that's 80,000 members, though that number has not been independently verified. In 2022, Tate closed Hustler University amid allegations that the program was really a pyramid scheme. It was the beginning of an avalanche of legal troubles that continue to this day. And in 2022, Andrew and Tristan Tate were arrested in Romania and charged with human trafficking. They were placed under house arrest in early 2023 and remained under house arrest on and off until February of 2025, when Romanian authorities lifted travel restrictions on the brothers. But the Tate brothers still face charges in Romania, as well as in the United Kingdom, which charged the brothers with similar crimes last May. Last year, Florida Attorney General James Othmeyer opened an investigation into the brothers, who frequently spend time in Miami. Despite outstanding warrants and investigations in the three counties that they called home, the countries, that they call home, the Tates seemed to enjoy freedom of movement until Saturday, when federal authorities arrested them at a Miami airport on a warrant issued by the Crown Prosecution Service of the United Kingdom. So what are the Tates charged with? Well, British prosecutors issued 38 new criminal charges against Andrew and Tristan Tate following their arrest, and the pair now face a total of 59 charges, according to the Hertfordshire Police, a total that could lead to their extradition to the United Kingdom. Andrew Tate is charged with rape and human trafficking related to 3 women, while Tristan is charged with 11 counts of similar crimes tied to 1 woman. The Crown Prosecution Service's new charges include 19 counts of crimes related to illegal child images and pornography for Andrew Tate. And the Tate brothers, of course, have denied all these charges against them. But I think beyond the facts, which is kind of what I've given you here, I think it really speaks to something about our society, and even on a spiritual level. And I think, well, Ben Shapiro speaks to this in his opinion piece, and I think he did a good job when he says, I'm going to name a bunch of things that used to get you kicked out of polite society. Being a pornographer, hitting a 15-year-old girl with a belt on camera in essentially a sexual fetish video, bragging about teaching men to pimp hoes, suckering women into posing nude on camera for your own financial gain, running a grift business to convince ignorant young women that if there are videos of them, shirtless in their Romanian warehouse with fancy cars, smoking cigars with a bunch of, clout chasing women in the background, well, they will get rich, teaching those same young men that all women are trash and whores. People who did such things used to be unwelcome to dinner, unwelcome at church, unwelcome in the halls of power, unwelcome by important and influential voices shaping our politics and our culture. But no longer. But here's the point. Sin has consequences, always and forever. And on Saturday morning, Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan were arrested in Miami for extradition to the UK on 38 new criminal charges, bringing the total charges against them to 59. Those criminal charges, of course, as we've said, include child and extreme pornography, rape, and sexual assault. I want to talk about why these two obvious scumbags and grifters were welcomed into polite society and championed as heroes and truth tellers, because a society that embraces sin destroys itself. Sin has consequences. I know it's not cool to point out that sin actually exists and that it actually has real world consequences, but I don't care about being cool. I mean, look at me, he says. I've never been cool. I don't care, is what Ben says. I have never cared. I will never care because the truth is still the truth. And reality is still reality. Sin always has and always will have consequences. Engaging in sin is like jumping off a 100-story building. The first 99 stories are super fun. And then that last story where your face meets the concrete, not so much. That's what happened to pornographer, grifter, alleged rapist, and admitted pimp Andrew Tate and his idiot brother Tristan this last weekend. They were, when they were arrested in Miami for extradition to the UK, their faces finally hit the concrete. The Tate brothers are two failed kickboxers whose scam originated as a webcam operation in Romania, where they essentially dragged more than 75 women into webcam pornography, and they made a lot of money from it. But in 2016, after getting kicked off Big Brother UK, that's the British reality TV show, for hitting a woman with a belt, Andrew Tate formed ties with the likes of Alex Jones and then glommed onto pro-Trump anti-war messaging with a slew of transgressive political talking points. And this is where his big fame and fortune came in. The next part is important, because even if you've never heard of the Tates, your kids definitely have. Since 2016, TikTok has been the primary driver of Andrew Tate's reach. Communist Chinese Party TikTok videos tagged with Andrew Tate have amassed over, get this, 13 billion views on YouTube. Even though the Tates have been officially banned from the platform, clip channels dedicated to reposting the Tates' content have accumulated some 230 million views on X. Tate's account regularly achieved millions of impressions by 2019, and the Manosphere became part of our cultural conversation. The Manosphere was a bunch of men explaining that the only way to truly be a man was to treat women like trash and work out a lot and walk around shirtless and violate all of society's taboos. He says, I have a basic rule. I hate when men rape women. I hate when men engage in pornography. I hate it when men run alleged sex trafficking rings or grifts that target vulnerable young men, treat them as morons to be milked for cash, prey on the vulnerability, teach them that the best way to get ahead in the world is to treat women like garbage, and simultaneously spread Andrew Tate clips. I think all that stuff is bad. I also think that if you are very concerned, as I am, about Muslim men raping white women in Britain, which is a very, very big thing that happened in Rotterdam for years, you should probably also be against allegations of Muslim men raping white women in Britain, even if their last name is Tate. So here's the big question. Why did they get away with all of this for so long? Why were so many people into the Tate's stuff? The answer is really quite obvious, but it's something we seem to have forgotten. The Tates are sinful people, and sin can be full of, well, it can be fun for some people. Sin has always been fun for some people. This is true in every biblical text. If it weren't fun, people wouldn't do it. If it weren't transgressive, people would not do it. The sin of eating the fruit in the Garden of Eden was the transgressiveness. People are drawn to sin. We have to acknowledge the reality of male nature. Andrew Tate is, for an enormous number of men, an embodiment of what the worst part of men wish they could get away with: consequence-free sexual promiscuity, consumerism, abandoning the kids, shacking up with all of the clout-chasing models next door, and zero jobs, zero work, zero consequences. All fun, all the time, all sin. Everyone knows what the Tates are doing is bad. But for some, the badness is actually the point, because the badness demonstrates that we are free. Being free from the consequences of sin used to be a leftist preference. That was the draw of the Marxists in the 1920s. That was the draw of the left in the 1960s. Free love, copious drugs, and zero consequences. But increasingly, freedom to sin has become a right-wing action as well. How did sin become so popular on the right? We're supposed to be the people who have systemic immunity to this. We go to church and we demand standards and personal behavior and want the 10 Commandments up on the classroom walls. I've been saying this sort of stuff, he says, for my entire career, since I was 17. I have been promoting traditional value all along. Very early in my career, I was mocked incessantly for the fact that I openly said that I was a virgin until marriage, which is a thing that I did and my wife did also. And now we are married for 18 years with 5 beautiful children, because virtue is good and sin is bad. But people mock that. They mock it. You're a fuddy-duddy. You're a stick in the mud. You're uptight. Why can't you just be a little cooler? I don't care about being cool. I don't care about that. I care about the truth. But reactionary politics is sinful because it tends to legitimize sin. Traditionally, societies construct a series of seawalls against sin. If you have an ocean of sin and it's threatening a tsunami, you have to have some seawalls. The first seawall was societal shame. If you were a pornographer, for example, you were not welcome in polite society. You weren't welcome at church. You weren't welcome at family dinners, nothing. Get out. We don't want you here. You're gross. Stay away from me. Stay away from my kids, and stay away from my community. The societal left decided that all this was far too judgmental. So the left in the West constructed systems designed to minimize the consequences of sin and to obliterate social standards. We created entire welfare states, not just to alleviate poverty, but to serve the consequences of sin. And we actually incentivize things like sexual promiscuity and drug use, sometimes by accident, sometimes even on purpose, by treating those these not as moral problems, but as social diseases that could be alleviated with simple cash outlays. The idea was that poverty created sin. Thus, alleviate poverty and you alleviate sin, rather than the reality that, very often in a free system, sin creates poverty because there are consequences to making bad decisions. But We decided that societal consequences were bad, so social consequences were destroyed. For the left, to alleviate the consequences of sin materially while allowing people to still sit in judgment would be mean and judgmental, and we wouldn't want that. We have to be nice. Conversely, we as a society decided that it was virtually important to stigmatize people with social standards. These people were prudes, they were cruel, and they hated love. They hated joy. They were probably even suppressing their own, perversity. If you stood for virtue, the truth was probably you were hiding some shame of your own. Or you should be made to feel ashamed because you are being the worst thing of all, judgmental. The right didn't sit still for this, but the blowback, when it came, didn't come in the form of a restoration of standards. Instead, politics became incredibly reactionary. Politics is basically a pendulum that swings from side to side, and the right reacted by embracing anybody who would tear down the left, no matter what it took. Kind of the opposite of Trump derangement syndrome. The reactionary right decided that it actually needed transgressive figures, people who were sinful, who wouldn't play by the old rules. The sin was now the point. After all, you could only defeat the shame-using left not by course correcting and saying, no, here's what virtue looks like, but rather by being totally shameless, totally transgressive. And guess what? That was fun for them, because sin is, yes, fun. Because being transgressive of values is fun, and it's particularly fun when you can justify it to yourself. No one wants to respond to transgressive evil by standing, with good. Good is boring. Good is demanding. Good is dutiful. Some people want to engage in evil because evil is fun and addictive. And once they have the excuse, it's much more fun to go all the way. And I think really when you get right down to the Tates in this instance, it tells us some things about our society. It tells us that there is a void. And I actually go back to April 3rd. Jonathan Alpert, he's a psychotherapist in New York City and Washington, D.C., and he's also the author of the book Therapy Nation. And he wrote an article talking about this all the way back then in April, when he said that Netflix's Louis Theroux, inside the Manosphere, wants viewers to fear the men it puts on the screen. What it never seriously asks is why millions of young men are looking there for guidance in the first place. The easiest thing about the documentary is to focus on the symptoms, hyper masculine influencers, status obsession, aggression, and young men chasing money, control, and dominance. Some of it is ugly, and some of it should alarm us. But the documentary mistakes the supply for the demand. This culture did not emerge out of nowhere. It filled a vacuum that mainstream institutions still refuse to name. Spend 5 minutes online, and the shift is obvious. Podcasts about discipline and self-mastery command enormous audiences. The gym routines now double as moral philosophy. Young men trade advice on confidence, money, dating, ambition, and purpose with an urgency that feels almost existential. Much of it is crude. Some of it is wrong and openly corrosive. Yet millions keep watching for a reason elite culture still resists admitting. For years, young men have been told what not to be, while almost no one has been willing to say what they should become. The vacuum became a market. We have taught an entire generation of young men how to analyze their emotions, but not what to do with their lives. As a psychotherapist, he says, I see a version of this often. A young man recently spent nearly an entire session describing with impressive self-awareness why he felt stuck. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, and a fear of choosing the wrong path. He could name every feeling in detail. What he couldn't name was what he actually wanted. The problem was not a lack of insight, it was the absence of aim. And in my book, Therapy Nation, he says, I argue that our culture has become increasingly fluent in the language of validation and self-analysis while growing less comfortable with challenge, standards, and the harder work of building resilience. Nowhere is that imbalance more visible than in the lives of young men who have been encouraged to interpret themselves endlessly, but rarely challenge to build a life. Andrew Tate and an entire ecosystem of male self-mastery influencers thrive because they offer what mainstream culture increasingly withholds: direction, standards, and permission to pursue ambition without apology. None of this excuses the ugliness of what many of these figures sell. It simply explains why the market for it became so large. The mainstream response has been to condemn the message while refusing to confront the conditions that made it so attractive. Young men today are caught in a double bind: show ambition and risk being labeled toxic, hold back and risk becoming invisible. Assertiveness is suspect, but passivity is miserable. The result is paralysis, followed by backlash. What is often dismissed as bro culture did not create this confusion. It recognized it early and built an industry around it. What makes this moment more dangerous is the collapse of credible alternatives. Institutions that once offered direction, from schools to workplaces to families, now speak in softer, more hesitant language. Expectations are blurred, standards are hedged, and authority is treated as something to apologize for rather than exercise. In that environment, many young men are left with a surprisingly vague idea of adulthood. They are taught to be emotionally aware and careful with language, which matters. What they are less often given is a clear sense of what adulthood actually asks of them, like responsibility and discipline and competence and something worth aiming at. The result is a generation that often knows how to monitor itself better than how to direct itself. Self-awareness becomes an end in itself rather than a tool in service of an ambition and growth. That leaves a dangerous opening for anyone willing to offer a more forceful script. Even a flawed script can feel liberating when it is one of the only things still speaking in the language of standards, goals, earned competence, and direction. When institutions stopped offering a believable model of mature masculinity, the loudest online figures stepped in and supplied one. A second cultural shift has made the problem worse. The language of therapy has escaped the consulting room and seeped into the schools and the workplaces and culture itself. Ordinary struggle is now recast as harm, discomfort as danger, and stress as injury. The result is a generation less practiced at enduring difficulty and more dependent on emotional permission before action. We have become fluent in emotional vocabulary while growing less comfortable with standards and authority and the basic truth that difficulty is often the price of growth. That gap is where the Manosphere thrives. It offers something closer to permission, the freedom to pursue goals without endless self-qualification, to value discipline without shame, and to move forward without first turning every impulse into diagnosis. Young men are asking a basic question. What should I aim for? If mainstream culture refuses to answer it, the loudest and most extreme voices online will. And I'll say that the Bible holds the key to all of this. It gives direction to how to become a man and what that means. We need to stop listening to culture on this topic and listen to what God is saying on the topic. But I would like to hear what you are saying on this topic. And of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Go to our YouTube page and like and subscribe there. That definitely helps us. And thank you for listening.
This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.